Hello and welcome to Metaphysical Soul Speak. I'm your host, Elena Fox Starks. Today we're going to be talking about grids, Earth grids, part 2. Yesterday we went over in depth about the healing grids around the planet and how the old grids that were not serving us anymore, or humanity as a whole, were not being served by these grids. Basically, we went over how they were broken up and how new grids were put in its place. Today, we're going to talk about a little different kind of grid, several different, in fact. So let's get right into it. I believe that there are basic grid patterns that are held so that certain things can exist. For example, there are plant grids and animal grids and rock and mineral grids, and that's why we are able to see them. There's a theory that we live in the matrix, or in a matrix, almost like a projection from the head of God or goddess, as you will, the Great Spirit. Almost like if you go to the movies and you are watching the images on the screen that are patterns of colored light, and you turn your head and look behind you, you're going to see the projector and a man running the projector, and the projector is beaming the light, which creates the patterns on the screen, and then the audio is there as well. So those are almost like two different patterns that create the experience of going to the movies and watching a movie. So if you were going to use that as a metaphor for this is kind of how God created this world. And I believe that there are architects. So God creates all of the universes. And then there's architects or elders that are in charge of each universe. And then each individual planet has their own set of architects, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so it goes like from the very big to smaller chunks of the universe, smaller parts. So this planet is made up of many, many different grids which form the matrix. And let's see, how can I put this more? I don't know if I can make it more clear than that. You might want to rewind and hear this again later. And maybe you'll get different. I'm sending out a visual, so if you're psychic, you'll catch it on a psychic level from hearing the patterns in my voice right now. The pattern and rhythm of my language will bring this image to you. I'm showing you like a cubed matrix pattern. Okay, so I believe that there are basic grid patterns that hold our world in Earth together. And I believe that each of us individually has our own idea of what these are, and we project our own patterns out as well. And when we are consciously aware of gridding the planet, like I was with putting up the healing grid, I believe that we can change our world by gridding it with different things. So I believe that, for example, there is a pattern of whale, and there's a pattern of dogs, and there's a pattern of cats, and maybe there's a smaller grid for the individual types of dogs. So maybe there's a Doberman Pinscher grid or pattern, and then there's also, for each individual thing. You get it. So there is something, though, that I do want to mention, is that when we have ghosts in our environment, it could be one of two things. Now, there's a grid, I believe, that would be the energetic, it's like an energetic formulation that allows for ghosts to occur on the planet. And a ghost is a spirit that left suddenly or violently, or got confused and didn't go to the light when it should have. A lot of times people refuse to leave their graves because they believe There's a lot of religious people, especially in the south of the United States, that believe that Jesus is going to come back and pull them out of their graves, so they don't go to heaven when they're supposed to. And then people like me as psychic mediums have to pull them out of their freaking grave because they are stubborn. They're literally going to lay with their dead corpse for all of eternity, because that ain't happening. That's not going to happen. Jesus is not going to come and get you, you know? So there's a lot of cleansing that has to take place from a healing perspective to get these people up and out, you know. But the majority of the ghosts are because they're confused or they're violent deaths have put them in a position where they want to see vengeance or justice served. And so the ghost patterns stay here. Now, the ghosts stay here, but if there's a pattern, that's one thing. And if there's it's separate from the ghost. So, for example, my late husband, Terrell, told me when he was a kid, his parents used to have people over on Saturdays and Sundays, and he loved the energy of the people's voices, kind of the muffled voices in the other room. And he always felt like that was really amazing. Like, it was a very amazing feeling to kind of drift off to sleep, and where you feel safe because there's people around you. It's people you know, you love, you trust. And this set up a pattern in his environment. And later, after this had gone on for a few years, because it was something that was repeated often, it was able to energetically become stuck as a pattern. And probably, maybe, because he loved it, so he put his own energy into it as well, which possibly anchored it into his environment. So that one evening around, in the middle of the night, like 2 or 3 in the morning, he heard all these people. And it was like on a Wednesday or something. And he was like, "What? My parents have people over now. I have to go to school tomorrow." And he got really angry. And he burst into the kitchen, which is right next to his bedroom, and no one was there. It was silent. The lights were off. Everyone in the house was asleep. In fact, now he's the one making noise. And he's like, how did that happen? I know I heard the people there. And this happened a lot after that. And he there was created a pattern in his environment. And so he knew from that point on, when he heard it, usually there's no one in there. But a lot of times he'd race in there, no one was in there. Well, that wasn't spirits or ghosts. It was just a pattern in the environment. And I believe that there are grids that are able to hold patterns in the environment. So that's one example. Another thing is when someone is violently murdered, like say there's a duel in the middle of the night, and it's like 11 o'clock at night, and there is a man shoots another man, and it's been 100 years, but every single night you could see the ghost spirits of the man shooting the other man, and it's exactly the same every single time. That is a pattern that has been impressed upon the environment that will remain there unless it's cleansed. And it's different than a grid, and it's different than an actual ghost. Okay, so it's just I think the grid holds that ability for the pattern to exist, and we learn from patterns. So it's there until it's not anymore, and usually it's not there after you cleanse it. So, but if you see the same thing playing out again and again and again and again, for example, I was living in Chico, California, and every night at 11:30, I would hear the train. And the moment the train started, I heard a bop, 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 3 knocks on my door. And no one was ever there. But it drove me crazy because I would hear the first whistle of the train, boom, boom, boom on my door, and then the train would go by, and that would be it. And every stinking day, I mean, I was there for like a year, and every day this happened. And I thought, I'm going to get wise to this. Maybe there's someone pulling a joke. I mean, why would someone pull a joke on me every day, 365 days? It's ridiculous. But I looked at the clock. It's like, a few minutes before this happens. And I put my hand on the door handle. And when that bop, bop, bop energy happened, I felt the energy go through me. There was a ghost that walks through there and knocks on the door. And it walked through my body. Oh, it was just the creepiest feeling. And the bop, bop, bop was physical. It was a physical pattern in the environment. And it shook the door, and it shook my hand, and it vibrated my body. And then I felt the spirit go through me. It was so creepy. And I opened the door real quick. No one was there. And in the summertime, I'd leave my window, my curtain open. And I would watch my door from inside, and someone would still knock, but no one was there. But because it happened every day at exactly the same time, I knew that it was a pattern of a ghost, not the ghost itself. So maybe every day or every night at that time, someone would knock on that door. So I think that there is a thing called the ghost grid. And before I get into that, I wanted to mention that there is a pattern of man. And a lot of years ago, I read a book called The Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ. And it was written by a psychic medium and her husband. The husband wrote down what she was saying as she was seeing it and reading the story of Jesus' life directly from the Akashic records. And by the way, you can view your own Akashic records in heaven. If you go up to heaven, there's like a hall, like a giant library, and you could go right to your Akashic records and not only read your records of this life, everything you've said, everything you've done, everything you've felt, everything you've been through. Also, you can go and see all your past lives as well. And by the way, this is represented in the Holy Tarot by the High Priestess in the original Rider-Waite deck and in the deck that was created by Paul Foster Case for the builders of the Addendum Mystery School. In the actual card, the High Priestess, on her lap, in her hand, she holds a scroll. That scroll represents your Akashic records. There's a little secret there. Let it slip. I'm part of the mystery school, so that was one of the things that they put in one of our lessons. I always thought that was super interesting. Anyway, in this book, The Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ, Jesus did say, Brother Yeshua, he did say, the pattern for man has always been. And what that means is we're not evolved from monkeys or chimpanzees or, snuffleupaguses. We're literally from what God created us to be. We are created in the image and likeness of God. We are a specific pattern specialized to this world, to this earth, to this matrix schematic. So I thought you guys would find that interesting. So there are different patterns, there's different grids, and those grids are in place to hold us in place. That's how we see our world. That is how we view our world. Now, I believe that when there is a ghost that's murdered real quick, or killed real quick or dies suddenly and they're scared, they will they're allowed to exist because of the grid that allows for ghosts and spirits to remain, to work out whatever they need to work out. So there's some ghosts and spirits that are just a pattern that walk right through you, and there's no awareness there because it's a pattern. But when it's a ghost that's kind of connected to that phantom grid, I call it, when they're connected to the phantom grid, they're able to interact with you and talk to you and ask you for a favor or ask you for help. And I'm going to go over this a little bit more later in another episode because this is very, very interesting stuff. How do you release a spirit when it comes and asks you? So I believe that there are grids around the planet that are being built that will be made up of positivity, light, and the new mentalities, the new energies for the fifth dimensional world that we are trying to mutually co-create with each other and with the Creator himself, herself. So other patterns and grids that are around the world, we know about the longitude and latitude lines. That's a pattern that someone came up with, and now they laid that down. Now we have GPS because of that. So that is a grid. Also, we have the ley lines, which are energetic corridors. We used to call it in California, in Chico, my group of friends, we used to work with Jose Arguelles, and we called it the California Corridor, only because we're from California. But it went from Alaska all the way south, down through California and beyond. And there's a specific energy pattern that's there. I noticed in North Dakota there was one too. And I believe that there is also a ley line that runs through Sedona, Arizona. So there are places, Machu Picchu is on a ley line as well. There are places on the planet that are a part of a greater energetic grid. And I do believe that we used to have a magic grid that went around the world, and it was created by the primitive peoples, or us when we were more primitive. And we didn't have logic or scientific explanation of things. We just attributed everything to magic. And we did rituals of various kinds. And I believe that the magic grid is starting to break up, has been breaking up, but it's still there. It's just that people aren't putting the energy into it anymore like they used to. So I believe it's possible in the fifth dimension we will have a magic grid again, but it's going to be a higher octave of what we had before, because we have a higher understanding now than what we did before. So I wanted to talk about, there's another thing called, that I believe is happening, is as a part of the fifth dimensional world, we are creating a higher octave manifestation grid, where we're going to be manifesting really rapidly. We don't have that dense, hard energy holding us back from getting what we want in time, where there's extra time. I feel that the time is going to be more fluid. Things are going to start speeding up compared to what we were used to, and that will also in turn speed up our manifestations. Another thing is, I believe we're going to have a new money equality grid. There's been a lot of talk from many different sources in the past 2 years about the basic income. And there's even a website, I think it's called basicincome.org, or BN, B-I-E-N, which means good or well in Spanish. BN is Basic Income Earth Network. And I do believe that will be a brand new pattern in the fifth dimension, where everybody on the planet, when they hit adulthood, would automatically get a $2,000 a month stipend, for example. It might vary from place to place, but everyone on the planet will have enough to eat with, to live with, to have a basic life. And then people will work out of the joy of wanting to work, out of the joy of wanting to be a nurse or a construction worker or a taxi driver or a healer, massage therapist, whatever. I believe that that's a pattern that's being set up by the grid that's being laid down by our minds, because we are co-creators in this world. So I hope you find this interesting. I feel like there's probably hundreds of grids. We just don't know about it. And it's all these grids that are put together that create the matrix. And a few months ago, I was on psychedelics for the sole purpose of learning more about this stuff. And I met the architects who created color and how they used grids to put color into this world. And there's a lot more colors than what we're able to see. And shrimp can see like there's one specific shrimp that can see like 250,000 colors, or maybe it's just 250 colors. And we only see like 10 colors and then the variations thereof. We don't see that much. But there's other animals that see less than us, and there's other animals that see more than us. And I think as we go into the fifth dimension, you're going to start seeing more. I've started to see little glimpses of there's like a kind of a fuchsia and a kind of an electric blue, kind of a higher electric kind of green, but they're not 100%, like you can't find them on the planet. The closest that you would come to that would be like a neon sign, but it's nothing compared to that. So it's kind of a fun thing we can look forward to. But grids are what create this world, because we're in the matrix, the projection of God's mind, if you will. So anyway, I did want to talk a little bit about how to implement grids, physical grids, in your house to create a better environment. And there was a book I read a long time ago. I think it was called Egg Healing or Egg Magic. But it was written by Draja Mikaharik. And I want to say this is from the cultures of the Caribbean, maybe an Afro-Caribbean. I don't know. Or maybe it's just from Africa. It's African. But I'm a little confused as to where this comes from now, to be honest. It's been years, like 20 years. But in this book, I did learn something that has served me well over the years. And eggs are like a perfect crystalline form, and they will suck out like a vacuum all of the negative energy in your space. So if you grid pattern your house with eggs, when you go buy eggs at the store, buy an extra dozen and put one egg in every corner of your house, and 7 days later, get them very gently, because remember, they're raw eggs, you don't boil them first, and you gently put them in a bag and you put them in the trash without breaking them, and it will take all the negative patterns, all the subtle energy out of your space. And this is especially important to do if you have an animal that's sick, if you have a baby that gets sick, or an elderly person that gets sick in your energy field, or if you have a plant that seems to be dying in spite of you watering it and giving it enough sun. A lot of times it's just the plants, babies, animals will pick up on negative energy, and they will pull it into their bodies, because they don't have the defenses that other people do. So the sick, the infirm, elderly people will, if they're sick, they'll become sicker. So it's important to keep your environment clean. And one way to clean it is to grid your house with the eggs. And 7 days after you start, you gather them up and throw them away again. So I recommend to do it the day before trash day. So if trash is picked up on Wednesdays, put the eggs out on a Tuesday, and the following Tuesday you can get them and put them in the trash, and then they'll be carried away Wednesday. So all your negative energy will be carried to the junkyard, and it'll be dispersed when the eggs break, but it won't affect you or your environment or anyone around you anymore. An alternative method would be to bury the eggs off-site in a natural place where it won't affect other people, because the eggs eventually will break, but the earth will absorb it. So that's another thing that you can do. I do recommend, if you're Native American specifically, if you could get a hold of some obsidian arrowheads, and you could grid your house with it. You could put them up across all of your windows. You could put them across your doors, on the outside or the inside, either way. And this will keep all negative spirits out, living and not living. If someone is very, very negative and they're an energy vampire, and they come into your space and you've gridded your house with obsidian arrowheads, what will happen is within an hour, they will start to get very sick. They will have like a stomach ache or a headache, and they'll feel so sick and they'll have to leave. And when they leave, they'll start to feel better. And it's for your protection. So if you do something like this, what will happen is you will keep all the negative people out, and you'll keep your energy in your house clean as a result of that. I don't recommend obsidian for everybody. It's for people who have a very strong background in working with energies like this. Obsidian does attract spirits and ancestors, and you will be able to talk with the spirits, but if that scares you, just stay away from it entirely. But alternatively, you could put crystal quartz up around your house, and you put, grid it however you like. I recommend just a crystal in every corner, and clean the crystals either by smudging or running them under water, or if they will not be affected by salt, you could put them in a bowl of salt for overnight, once or twice a month, and take out the negative energy. The salt will pull it out. The salt itself is a crystal. It'll pull it out, and then you just throw that out in the trash. Don't put it back on your property again, because it'll absorb, and plus it will ruin your plants. Salt is not good for your plants. So if you want to use crystal quartz, that will just keep everything kind of pure and clean. If you want to add a secondary purpose to your grid, you want love in your life and forgiveness and the energy of gentle community, I recommend rose quartz. You could do amethyst if you want to connect to higher vibrational beings, your angels, spirit, your guardian angels, your spirit guides, ascended masters, people that will help you on your spiritual path. If you want a stronger meditation practice, you could grid your meditation altar or your meditation room with amethyst. Also, if you use smoky quartz or topaz, that will simultaneously ground you, but also help lift you up so that your mind can go to higher realms, so you could function on all levels. And I think that also helps to align your chakras. And turquoise is a good stone for spiritual protection. There are other stones that have the color turquoise, and they all have a different purpose. Some of them are to speak with your twin flame. Some are to speak with spirits, your ancestors that have passed before you. And some are to speak to Pleiadians or extraterrestrials. There's also like moldavite will help you to speak to Pleiadians. My friend Helen told me years ago. So there's different purposes for different ones. You could look it up in the Crystal Bible, I think is the name of a book I used to have, or just go to a New Age store, or your local bookstore, Barnes & Noble or what have you, or even online. I believe there's several of these online now. You could just go look up whatever. If you want success in business, orange citrine, also that alleviates depression and sadness and negativity. So I used to buy my grandma citrine all the time, and she loved it. Made her feel very positive and light, and also helped her to stop spending so much money. She was a shopper, so it does help with that. And I bought for my mother rose quartz, so she could always be in touch with her heart. So there's different reasons to have different stones, but if you grid your place, remember you have to keep it. You have to keep everything clean. You could clean your crystals by putting them in the sun for a whole day, or putting them under the full moon, or put them in water under the full moon. Also, just running them under water for an hour. An hour. You don't have to do it for a whole hour. I'm sorry. Do it for like maybe a couple minutes. Or you could sage them, burn sage or incense. There's different things you could do for different It just depends, it kind of goes with the flow of your own style. If you have kids, maybe don't burn incense around them. If you have birds or animals, you might not want to burn incense or sage. It might be too much for them. So just go with your gut, trust yourself and your own instincts and whatever you feel like. I mean, water is easy to come by. You just turn on your faucet usually. I mean, if you live in Flint, Michigan, maybe find a different method. You don't want to use that water. There's a lot of negativity surrounding water in Michigan. So anyway, I hope this has helped. I'm going to go over Organite as a way to grid everything later on. I'm going to do another show on this specifically because I could go for a half hour on that one easily. So I believe that you will be able to live a better life if you grid your apartment or your bedroom. You could even grid just underneath your bed and get a better night's sleep. If you're a married couple or having problems in the bedroom, maybe there's a way you could grid a pattern under your bed to have a better sex life. Really and truly, the sky's the limit. And when you set an intention with your crystals, you could grid your house for anything at all. And while we are collectively as a whole putting new grids down on this new fifth dimensional earth that we're finding ourselves on, you could also do it for your own personal section of the earth as well. And with that, I wish you a wonderful week. And, well, that's about it. I love you with my whole heart. Stay well and stay healthy. And talk to you soon. Peace. Hey, you. Have you ever thought about having your own podcast like me? Was it even a New Year's resolution? For me, it sure was. But as I've been looking into this for months, I was daunted. There's so many questions I had. When I was trying to get this off the ground, I was wondering, how do I record the episode? How do I get it across all the platforms? How do I get my podcast on Apple Podcasts when I don't even have an iPhone? How do I get it onto Spotify and all the other places? How do I get people to listen? And how do I make money from my podcast? How do I edit it? Oh my God, I had all these questions and I was so confused until I discovered the simple answer is Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and it is ridiculously easy to use. And now Anchor can match you with great sponsors too, so you could get paid to podcast. All you need to do is record it. You don't have to go out and look for people to advertise on your show. They help you. So basically what I like about podcasting is I don't have to have a video of myself. You don't know if my hair is dirty or if I'm still in my pajamas or even if I'm wearing makeup. Haha. And it's so easy. I could do this from the comfort of my own home in my living room using this amazing app right from my cell phone. So easy, right? So if you've always wanted to start your own podcast and make money, by the way, doing it, please go to anchor.fm/start. That is anchor.fm/start to join me and the diverse community of podcasters that are already using Anchor. Again, that's anchor.fm/start. I can't wait to hear your podcast, and I can't wait to favorite you. Woohoo! Let's be broadcast podcast buddies. I'll see you there. Metaphysical Soul Speak is run on sponsors and listener support. This means listeners like you. If you are so inclined to support my efforts and my little podcast, please visit me at anchor.fm/metaphysical and pledge an amount of your choosing today. Thank you.